one.
Let's do this!
Good evening and welcome back to a brand new episode of Coffee with Toffees. We hit the wrong button there. There we are. Welcome back, guys. If you are listening or you're watching live or wherever you choose to watch the show from, I appreciate you being here. Remember, if you are on the podcast, hit that like button. Let them know that you like us. Maybe we can get a feature spot one of these weeks. That said, guys, this is Coffee with Toffees, the inception, the beginning of all that is Toffees shows. Now, you can catch me on Around the Pit every Sunday night, and that's been a lot of fun to do, and we'll keep on moving forward with that when we can get the guests, and that's going to be a bit of a caveat there. If we can't put together 3 guests, we'll probably have to redefine the show, or maybe do something a little bit smaller on a Sunday night. That said, big thank you to Razer for supporting this show, providing all of the mice, keyboards, etc. used to put it together. Still looking for a few more sponsors for the show, so if you are interested in becoming a part of the team for Coffee with Toffees, as well as Around the Pit and other projects that we undertake, please feel free to email me at 5minusgaming or 5minusgaming@gmail.com. And if you want to support the show individually, keep in mind that we don't have any monetary support for the show from sponsors. You can go to patreon.com/toffees and choose to support it directly. Every little bit counts, and I really do appreciate anybody who has contributed, as it does help host the show and pay for the costs of running this bad boy for over a year now. So very, very exciting stuff. Last announcement before we get into the good stuff, this is the last week to order mugs. I am discontinuing them as they have become just too expensive to manufacture. Really, I think we're profiting at about $1 after everything, and losing sometimes on shipping and handling. So not worth doing anymore, but if you want one of these sweet Coffee with Toffees mugs, I'm going to put in one last big order. So if you go to the website, twitch.tv/Toffees_Dota2, where we film live, you can scroll down and you can find the link to get yourself a Coffee with Toffees mug, which is now officially a limited edition because we will not be making any more. And I guess I should say there might be a chance, maybe at our 2-year anniversary, we'll roll out one big order if you want to get some. I am working on a t-shirt shop with Designed by Humans, and we are also going to be replacing the coffee mugs with hats. Now we've got flat snapbacks as well as fitted ones. This one's signed by VG, so I'm probably going to keep this for myself. This is pre-TI5 VG. That said, it is going to be available and it'll be linked on the website starting next week once the coffee mugs are done with. So that's it for cleaning house, getting everything taken care of there. Let's talk about the news. Now, big news, 6.85 is here, majors are announced, lots of stuff going on, but this is one that I think is really important for you to know right now, whether you're a casual player or someone who's just getting ready to log into the new 6.85 and is wicked excited, and that is this: they made a change to consumables. That's right, your salves, your mana pots, the things that you typically used to click and then use, are now click to use. They work the same way as a bottle. I can't tell you how many games I was in last night, even today, that basically people are just misusing those. And the amount of cussing and swearing and, oh shit, I forgot, I meant to use this differently, that I hear in every game is out of control. So make sure that you are aware of that. You have to use it the same way as a bottle to target it on other people. So if you are a support like myself, then that is something that you definitely need to be aware of. All right, next talk about, this is something else that came from the 6.85 patch. And don't worry, we're getting all the meat and potatoes, but I do want to bring up, and that is something that is really cool that they added to the patch that doesn't show up in the patch notes that I saw, and that is localized chat. The next time that when you logged in, you probably noticed a new chat window that is your city that you live in or somewhere nearby. I think this is the coolest thing that they've done with this so far. I think it's really neat. Last night we just sat around and talked about our favorite restaurants, where to meet up and have a beer. So like Indianapolis chat was a lot of fun, was really cool to sort of get to know people in the area that play Dota, because sometimes it does feel like an isolated thing. Like you play in this international community, but nobody really loves it near you, because everybody, and I'm sure that you have this experience the same way that I do, I feel like anytime I run into a friend or an acquaintance and they're like, oh, you're into gaming? I'm like, yeah, I love gaming. They're like, well, what's your game? And I'm like, oh, I play Dota 2. And they're like, oh, well, I'm a leaguer. And I'm just like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Like, get out of my face. And I move on. And I feel like that happens a lot. Leaguers are infesting this state, and having people nearby knowing that they play was really cool. That said, Valve, please give us a mute or report feature, because inevitably the trolls will ruin this. Don't let it happen, Valve. Step in. Do the right thing. So that's my little soapbox. I want to get that out in the front of the show just in case anybody's watching. Then we need to get that mute button up and running ASAP. All right, now let's talk about majors. They are announced. The first major is announced. We talked about it on last week's show, we talked about it on Around the Pit. We said, hey man, majors are less than 2 months away, and we, the common man, know nothing about when it is going to happen. Well, the news is out. The cat is out of the proverbial bag. It looks like the main event will take place from Saturday, November 21st. That's going to be the good time. Lots of qualifiers going to be coming out. In between that, tickets do go on sale in 2 ways, starting September 27th. That is going to be tomorrow. So if you are listening to the podcast in the morning, make sure you run and get your tickets because you need to get that done. It sounds like, okay, cool. It sounds like this is coming to me from a viewer on the show right now, Mr. saying that they did just add the mute feature in a quick patch. So thanks, Valve. I'm going to assume that's because you were listening to the show just now and decided that you were going to add it. So you're welcome, everybody. That said, the major is going to be $3 million. No community contribution. So it's not going to be crowdsourced, from what I understand, or crowdfunded, which I think makes sense. There's just so much crowdfunding going on right now. I think it's really cool that Dota is investing $3 million flat out, probably with some partnership here with ESL, who is running the event, to put up such a big prize in the first major. And it's going to be a good one. 16 teams will be competing live at the major in Frankfurt, Germany. And here's the coolest part. Attendance to the major will be open to the public and will not require a ticket for any day except for the final. And that is a really cool thing. Now at TI, it was neat. You could watch in the yard. But honestly, until the final day, the stadium wasn't always full. There was a lot of games where it was empty. And I think that this free to watch thing is going to be a really neat feature, and honestly encourage people to travel because it cuts down on the price of going to this event. So kudos to them for doing that. No idea who the invites are. We know that it's going to be in November, and it's going to be, I think, a lot of fun. So definitely I'll keep an eye out. We'll probably get some folks on the show after ESL to talk about likely picks, who might be going, and if there is an announcement like there was for TI, I will definitely make sure that I catch it, hop online, and start doing some sort of announcement coverage show because it is a lot of fun to do it that way. So thank you, Valve, for finally telling us. Is it a bit late? Probably, but are we mad at you? Definitely not, because $3 million is a great prize pool, and let's be honest, it made CSGO incensed. Boy, were they angry about the prize pool. So I thought that that was very interesting. We'll continue to follow that as we go forward. The next big piece of news is, of course, 6.85. It has arrived as of September 24th. Things have changed. Not a huge, massive, game-shaking patch, but some big dogs were nerfed, some little dogs were grown, and a lot of little changes to really the mechanics and the flow of the game. That said, I'm going to be honest with you, I am in no way an expert in mechanics. I am not the master of Dota 2. So what I did do is I thought about this. We sat down, and I said, you know, we could have a show where we have a bunch of analysts come on and talk about the changes in the patch. And it ended up being a 2 or 3 hour show where we go through and we talk about every individual thing. You know, we go down the list of each individual change, and it's just a lot to deal with. And I think it's a lot. If you want that, you can go find it on YouTube right now. I know Marlene did an excellent 15-minute summary. I know a couple of other folks have also done some good here's the patch note stuff. But what I really wanted to do is I wanted to bring you, the podcast listeners and the viewers, a condensed format, because that's sort of what we've done here on Coffee with Toffees. It's always been an abridged version of the news to help you sort of keep up with things and go about your day. And that's what we're going to do with this. So I invited 3 of our correspondents, people who've worked with the show in the past, who work with the show a lot, or who I work with personally, to give me, I sent them an email and I said, can you give me a 2 to 5 minute summary of what happened in the patches? Tell me the things that you think are the most important, who got the biggest buffs, who got the biggest nerfs. Just kind of fill me in, because I think that you're a strong analyst. And the folks who came back and said they were absolutely excited about doing it, I'm excited to have them on here, is going to be Blaze, who you can find at Blaze Casting, Gorgon the Wonder Cow, who you can find at the Wonder Cow, and Turbo, who you can find at DOS Turbo. And they did these great summaries for us, so we are going to go to them without further ado. And now the goal here is I want to play them all back to back, because what I thought would be interesting is these analysts have not spoken to each other. These are their individual assessments of the patch changes. So they could be very similar, they could be very different, but instead of hearing a bunch of folks talk and sort of agree, disagree, I wanted to get the raw opinions and see how they measured up against each other. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to flip it over to the full. I'm going to let you watch the videos. For those of you who are listening, there is a video aspect, but it should play really well on the podcast, and I do hope that you guys enjoy these analysis. So you're not going to see me maybe for a couple of minutes as we get this thing up and running. This is the first time we've sort of used correspondence. I'm going to hope to do a lot more more of that as the show continues to move forward, because I think that it adds a lot to it. So stick with me. Let me know what you think about doing these sorts of features, these pre-recorded stuff. I think they're going to add a lot to the show. So let's jump into it and get ready for some patch analysis from the guys. First up is going to be Gorgon, the Wonder Cow.
Hi guys, my name is Gorgon the Wonder Cow. You can catch me over at the Wonder Cow on Twitter. I've been the patch analyst over at Join Dota Editorial for about 2 years, and Toffees has asked me to come in and talk just a little bit about this new patch. So I would say this patch is just the next step for patch 6.84. It's another balance patch. For the most part, all of the ideals of the first patch are being forwarded on here. Most heroes received buffs here, very small buffs. A couple of heroes that were really popular, either in pro games or pub games, have received fairly sizable nerfs, including Leshrac, Storm Spirit, Phantom Lancer, basically anybody that you've been seeing a whole bunch of. Some of the changes that I think you should know. First of all, Techie's Mines. You can attack them to destroy them without them blowing up anymore. They're half as effective as they used to be, and they now have a 10 gold bounty. If you are playing against the Techies, there is absolutely no excuse for you to not have sentries, regardless of your role, really, but especially as a support. Those will literally pay for themselves as you knock down stacks of mines. That's really just something that you need to know. There are a couple of other Techies changes, but that's the big one. So for agility carries, a lot of them have received an indirect buff in that most agility carries have some sort of a build which is reliant on going into Heart and Manta. Both of those items receive buffs that are beneficial to agility heroes. The Heart now refunds more health, about 0.75% of your max HP, I believe, off the top of my head, per second. And Manta Style now costs less mana. Both of those are really great for agility carries who usually need more health and don't have huge mana pools. Also tend to build those items. So Viper, who also received a couple of other buffs. If you're looking at Weaver, if you're looking at even Phantom Lancer and Gyrocopter, who did receive nerfs, that is an indirect buff for them, refunding a little bit of that efficacy. And of course, Spectre, another one of those heroes that would potentially go for this build. There is a change to Dispersion that is widely misunderstood. I think it's kind of complicated in terms of the mechanics and how it influences the game. Basically, how it used to be is that Spectre did Dispersion in the same amount of damage that she ended up taking. Now she does Dispersion before she takes damage. What that effectively means is that if you are an intelligence carry, if you are a support, or if you are lane creeps, you're going to be taking more Dispersion damage than Spectre does. Or than Spectre actually takes damage. If you are a Spectre, your goal is to have high armor and high HP, even more so than before. The higher your armor, the more relative damage to your opponents you're going to do compared to the damage that you are taking. It also makes Spectre much better for defending high ground and for pushing out lanes. All things said and done, it's a pretty good change for Spectre. We've already seen it toyed around with in the first couple of games. Nature's Prophet received a pretty significant buff in that very few heroes can now outrun Treants without Brown Boots. So early game you have that. The ability Sprout now costs less mana, which means that he's better able to rotate across the map with teleportation and
all right, and that was Gorgon the Wonder Cow. You can find him at the Wonder Cow over on Twitter if you liked his analysis. I thought it was a very clear perspective. I'm not going to go too deep into it because these guys are experts and I don't want to get over, and I want to make sure that you have a chance to compare them all one after another. So we got a little bit from Gorgon. Let's now jump over to our next analyst, and this is going to be at Blaze Casting, or Blaze. You can find him doing contract work for BTS as well as a lot of other studios. A brilliant analyst, and I will say this, if you are not familiar with Blaze's work, he is one of the few people I think in the scene that surprises me that he is not employed by a pro team to sort of focus on numbers, draft analysis, and prep, because I think that that is something that he is very, very good at and is very strong in his analytical process. So I asked him to do this, and this is, without further ado, Blaze giving us his assessment of 6.85.
Hey guys, Blaze here. Toffees asked me to do a quick little clip on my thoughts on the new patch 6.85, which was a balance patch in preparation for the fall Frankfurt Major 2015. So I'm looking forward to the patch. Not too many major changes, but a lot of minor ones which have tweaked really who's who in the competitive pool. Definitely increasing the variety in the competitive pool. Going to be seeing some of those OP heroes taken down a notch. To talk about the biggest buffs really quickly, getting into it, Night Stalker is going to be a lot stronger in roaming around because he has higher base HP regen. I expect to see a lot of 4-position Night Stalker, almost as much as a Bounty Hunter. Bounty Hunter is a little bit better at being elusive in the jungle. Night Stalker is a lot more brute force and is probably going to be diving some towers. We're going to be seeing Nyx also in the offlane a lot more frequently. His Vendetta was probably his biggest liability in the early game. It's a lot longer now and allows you to roam much more effectively and control the tempo of the game. And Ags is pretty much core in the hero now. Invoker is actually going to be really strong, but only in the late game. Still kind of weak in the laning phase. We'll see about that roaming and how he can kind of get settled. Maybe he has to safe lane or something. But late game Invoker going Midas into many other late game items is going to be a lot stronger. Lifestealer is going to be picked up a little bit here and there. I mean, the fact is, Rage is going to be a shorter cooldown. If you actually need to get a BKB on the hero, you can go Rage, BKB, Rage, and have, like, I don't know, 22 seconds of magic immunity for your first BKB charge. Otherwise, you just get Rage more frequently. It's very nice, and the Ancient thing is pretty cool, too. It's minor buffs, but still important. Oh, can't forget Spectre. Spectre did get a buff to the Radiance. Gold cost is reduced, the diffusal's a little bit better, her dispersion's a bit better. We are going to see more of her. The minor buffs, Kunkka, Shadow Shaman. I think that the X marks is actually really important for the first 4 levels. Kunkka has trouble getting in range to initiate, and that even 50 range is going to be a big difference for him. So some more roaming Kunkka in a 4-position support. Shadow Shaman, actually really solid, since Roshan is probably harder to secure without the full strength of Medallion. The Master Wards are going to be good, and that Shackle is actually really strong now. Like, there are situations where if you know it's not going to be interrupted, it's actually better to level Shackles over Ether Shock. Not always, and probably not most of the time, but in general, that spell is really strong, and it's probably going to be at least second priority in terms of maxing it out. Chen Enchantress, Bane, all a lot better. We'll see what Enchantress can do in the late game with like Scotty, Mask of Menace. That'll be pretty fun. Bane, mana issues was his big thing, so getting that back on board, we'll see a lot more of him. Maybe Bane Kunkka, for example. Fury and Lone Druid, it'll be interesting. The pros that are good at playing these heroes, like Admiral Bulldog, will thrive with the new patch. I'm not sure if it's enough to make non-Furion and Lone Druid pickers to actually pick them up, but they are numerically a lot stronger. Biggest nerfs. Undying and Techies are pretty much, in my mind, wiped off of the face of competitive Dota 2. We're going to see a little bit Undying the next couple of weeks. People will try out that Aghanims thing, and long-term, people are going to learn how to play around it and how to counter it. And when they do, Undying will be a very fringe, very situational pick. Techies, just kind of pointless competitively. Lina, Leshrac, Storm. Very clearly nerfed out. Yule's, Bloodstone, all nerfed out. They obviously have less strength in the laning phase. It's going to be hard if they want to stay in the competitive scene. People will still pick them a little bit because of familiarity, but all in all, they're going to have to kind of prove their worth. They still are kind of lacking, especially with that Yule's for Lina, and Storm. Just everything costs so much mana now. The other item nerf was Glimmer Cape, so obviously that is going to promote some other magical damage dealers that weren't as popular, and maybe that's the Invoker, maybe we could see some other interesting side picks that benefit from Octarine and were too heavily encountered by the Glimmer Cape. Other stuff to know, we're going to see some heroes stronger by default. TA, for example, she's got negative armor against Roshan. She can secure that really well. She's got vision with traps. She's not as susceptible to be roamed upon because she has a refraction, whereas Shadow Fiend, while he's still kind of status quo, can be roamed on pretty heavily. But of course, their Ancient farm is slower. I mean, those two right-clicking Ancients, the Ancient Black Drakes are going to be increasing the armor of the Ancient stack, so those two, as well as like Gyrocopter and Luna, are going to have a little bit harder time actually clearing out the Ancients. And I guess the game is going to be more objective-based as a result, since you really have to fight for your Ancients, fight for Roshan. Last couple of things, obviously the supports got helped out a lot. The TP scroll is now only 75 gold, which is great, and promotes a lot more mobility and reactionary play. And then, of course, the dust is half the cooldown. That's actually huge in my mind. If you are really just trying to counter out some Invis heroes, you have the means to do it much more frequently. So I think that's really strong. Anyways, that's my overall thoughts on 6.85. Thanks, and hopefully you guys enjoy the patch.
Awesome. big thank you to Blaze for cutting that for us. If you liked what he had to say, you can obviously find him at Blaze Casting over on Twitter. Another good summary. And now we'll go to our last contributor. This is Turbo. You can find him at DOS Turbo. He works for Team Empire, travels for them, does a lot of interviewing and reporting, and I guess helps with some strategic analysis and stuff like that. Also does freelance writing for a couple of different websites. So invited him on the show to give us his opinions. Let's see what he has to say.
Hey, it's Turbo. Just going to do a quick breakdown of the patch, stuff that I thought was super interesting. Obviously, there are nerfs to Lina, Leshrac, Storm Spirit, not only in decreasing how efficient their spells are and how they do damage, and just making it harder for them to clear out camps so quickly and farm super fast, but also there were nerfs to Bloodstone, so that item is less appealing and less of a snowball item because it helps. It doesn't help. It's still a good item, but it doesn't help nearly as much as it used to. So those are the big nerfs. I think those were unsurprising. There are also nerfs to Techies, which I thought they might have gone a little overboard, but he still seems balanced and worth picking in a few situations. The surprise winners of the patch, in my opinion, are melee carries who build BKB. They buffed Chaos Knight. They gave him 5 armor decrease on crit. Slardar can phase through units now whenever he's sprinting. Phantom Assassin, Tiny, Alchemist, and Legion Commander and Sven were all buffed in subtle ways, but I think the biggest change is that BKB was changed significantly. Well, not that BKB was changed significantly, but a few key spells got nerfed in the way they affect BKB. So Winter Wyvern's ultimate doesn't affect magic immune targets in the AoE of the spell. That hero is super popular. Still a good pick, but BKB is a little stronger against her now. Winter Wyvern, Tusk Sigil doesn't go through BKB anymore, which is super nice. Again, Tusk still very good as a hero, and we still see him picked in the few games that have happened since the patch hit. But that just makes BKB a little more viable, a little easier to control in fights. Lina Ags doesn't do as much damage. It's still pure damage, but I don't think she should be able to one-shot heroes anymore, which is good. So it makes getting BKB a little more tantalizing. Often you would see gyrocopters go for S and Y because they just need raw HP. So now maybe it means BKB is a better option. Viper passive also no longer goes through BKB. Odie's ult doesn't get rid of mana through magic immunity either, but that hero is garbage, so who cares? And finally, Gyrocopter cooldown slow doesn't go through BKB, which is super important in my opinion. And it makes that item just a little more viable. So I think melee carries who rely on BKB to not get kited in team fights benefit a lot from this patch. And also a little bit of a stealth buff to melee heroes is that Magnus' Empower cooldown reduced from 12 seconds to 8, which is a slight buff for farming on melee carries. I think we might see Magnus picked a little bit more. There are a few other things that benefit BKB. The Medallion of Courage and Solar Crest no longer go through BKB, and they're also nerfed in their interaction with Roshan because it does half the normal armor reduction when applied to Roshan. So I think heroes like Slardar that have his ultimate, I think those will become super popular because they can help do Rosh a lot quicker. And yeah, I would say that probably one of the best heroes of this patch is probably going to be Slardar, just because of how strong he'll be in the off lane. He can't be body blocked now because he can phase through units when he's sprinting. He's also very tanky and strong in lane, so he can't be zoned out very easily. And the one hero I did want to mention before ending this is Io, who actually wasn't changed at all in the patch, but so Valve think he's in a good place, but by buffing out melee cores, they've also buffed the Io because he just pairs so well with melee cores. The farming is greatly enhanced when they've got the pocket Io healing them up and giving them attack speed. So I think Io combinations will become a lot more popular in the current patch. And that's basically all I got for now. Thank you very much for having me on.
All right, and that's the word from Turbo. You can find him at DOS Turbo over on Twitter. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you saw some differences in opinions, but also some similarities, which is really the goal of that, to sort of bring you a couple of different possible perspectives to help you understand a little bit more about the patch. And now here is my analysis of the patch. It's short, it's simple, it's sweet, and it is this, and I stand by it. We are going to see the rise, the successful rise, of the 4-position Space Cow. So get used to it, get excited about it. I think it's actually going to happen. So that's my hope, that's my dream, and I think it's actually going to come true. The second thing I've learned from this new video series is people's cameras are way too close to their faces, man. I don't know if you're staying that close to your monitor, but I think everybody needs to slide their chair back just a wee bit and pick up a little more space, because I'm a little worried about your guys' eyesight. That said, let's jump out of this sort of chat about discussion and updates. Like you said, if you want to know more, I would definitely check out Merlini's 15-minute analysis. That felt a little bit short, to be honest with you, if you want in-depth stuff, but there's a couple other places you can check out as well. So go look them up on YouTube. Definitely some good stuff floating around out there. Let's talk about tournament news, because that's also what we do on this show. So tournament roundup. If you don't want spoilers, now's the time to close your ears, because we're going to talk about them anyway. First one up on our list is the WCA, the World Cyber Arena European Qualifiers. Have been the talk of the town. So many teams floating around out there that can be very competitive. The whole lineup. This started with Virtus Pro, Monkey Business, Ninjas in Pajamas, Empire, Vega, Alliance, Na'Vi, Secret. These are all teams that we know, all teams that we expect good things out of, and this is the qualifier bracket for WCA. What the cluck? That's pretty crazy. So here's who came out on top, boys and girls, and that is Team Secret and Virtus Pro. And honestly, this is the first time I believe that we got to really see Team Secret sort of getting in and doing their thing, and it was good to watch, man. It was nice to see them. It's a $600,000 main event. But there's also, and this is an interesting part to me that I don't think a lot of other tournaments have done, an $87.5 thousand prize pool for the winners, which is Team Secret, of the qualifiers. So Team Secret secured $87,000 over VP, but both do advance to the main event. Team Secret looked good. They performed well. They did drop a game to Alliance, but they beat Na'Vi 2-0. And they beat Virtus Pro, who we know is a consistent team who has not made a lot of changes. Now, Virtus Pro did 2-0 Monkey Business, 2-0 Ninjas in Pajamas, and then dropped 2 games to Secret. So I think that does speak a little bit to the potential strength of the new Secret as they go forward. So it was a good vision to see for them as they got ready for the WCA, put a little cash in their coffers, and it was a good thing to watch. So if you haven't had a chance to go back, maybe watch Secret versus VP to show you exactly why they are still performing at a level that justifies the invites that they've had to LANs, and I don't think you can argue that after seeing their WCA play. All right, next up is going to be ESL 1 New York. The Chinese qualifiers were by far, I think, the most stacked and hardest to win. eHome did a really great job and showed that they are a real contender in New York. I think that that definitely... ESL 1 New York next week is going to be a huge indicator for who gets invites to the major. I think eHome is far and away going to be a shoo-in to get this invite. They look very good. They proved that in the qualifiers and have performed consistently in this and other tournaments. So ESL 1 New York, the final 8 is going to be Secret, Virtus Pro, CDEC, Evil Geniuses, Fnatic, Vega, Fire, which is exciting to see. We're going to see how they do, and eHome. So it's going to be a very good tournament. If you haven't already gotten your tickets to go to New York, make sure you do. All right, and I believe that we're going to have a in-depth preview of the event right before it starts by one of our lead writers, Proxy, as he'll put that into his new feature, Proxy's Perspectives, later this week. So check that out. MLG World Finals is going to be the next one up on the docket. EU qualifiers, man, it looks like, let's take a look at this. Yeah, Monkey Business took their first big win, which was qualifying for this LAN. With that, they started to look like a very strong, maybe even the strongest newly created team in the EU. And it looks like they have a lot of room to grow. They are a team that has roster growth potential in terms of a lot of raw talent that can get better. I think that speaks volumes for where they're going to go. North American qualifiers looks like another battle for who's on top of the NA Dota at the moment. C9 as well as Fire. Both had second chances at a LAN qualification. Fire did not make it through C9, however, and it looks like it is going to be DC Digital Chaos versus Cloud9 at 4 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. That is Saturday afternoon for that spot. North America has been a very intensely contested area over the last couple of months. C9 beating DC, beating Fire, beating... I mean, it's just a huge mix-up. So this would be a really good game tomorrow to see C9 versus DC for the MLG 100th event Grand Finals. And that'll fill out that NA invite spot. Next event we're going to talk about, let's jump over to the Non-Yang Championship. Check it out. eHome wins again. They take the qualifiers, dominate again, and show that they are the team to beat coming out of China right now. So look for them to be very powerful in ESL, as I said, as they will be going to Non-Yang for sure. EU SEA has not finished up yet. SEA hasn't started. EU just got rolling out. But as of now, participating teams for Non-Yang are Secret, VP, CDEC, LGD, VG, Fnatic, and Cloud9 from the American qualifier. So it should be shaping up to be a very, very, very good tournament. Obviously, now that eHome is part of it. Now we'll do a quick rundown of some of the smaller tournaments going on right now. Defense Season 5. Stage 1 is halfway through. It looks like a team has to get 3 matches to win, so 6 games basically to qualify to the next stage. Monkey Business already have this amount of points, and we'll see them in Stage 2. MB versus Power Rangers Game 2 was a really good game, so if you guys are looking for a game to watch, you want to pick up on a game, you don't have a lot of time to watch replays like I do, check out MB versus Power Rangers Game 2. Good game. Basically, Monkey Business, from what I understand, plays 4v5. No Tail controls both Tiny and the Wisp. Just good stuff to see, so a lot of fun. 3 teams from each group will advance to the next round to face off in 2 similar groups with another 6 invited teams. Last tournament on the list is the D2CL Season 6 that just started. It looks like another nice tournament with some lesser known teams. So teams that are going to be playing in this is Kaipi, I think is how you say it. That's the Bone 7's new team. No Logic Gaming, which is... Necroman, I believe is how you say his name, from Burning United, Nikwa from Alliance, and SSA Spartan, formerly from London Conspiracy. And then obviously Hellraisers as well with their new lineup. That's 50,000 plus crowdfunding, so a smaller tournament, but a good chance to sort of see what EU's up-and-coming scene is going to look like. Last thing to mention in terms of the roundup, and that is BTS Americas has come to a close, and that saw Cloud9 beat Imagine, who's going back to LVT as their name, or Leviathan, in a hard-fought 3-2 battle for the final. Ultimately lost, and honestly I think it was because a Techies was picked and it wasn't able to execute the way that it needs to be, unfortunately, which is crazy to me because Flying Zebra, honestly, I think is one of the most underrated supports in the North American Dota scene. And it hurt me to see the Techies come out and not go well. That said, Cloud9 does beat them, but I think that this speaks volume for a team, Leviathan, who was on the show last year, and nobody knew who they were. They were a non-factor in North American Dota, and now they are competing against C9 and some of the top teams to take these tournaments and have a genuine chance to do it. So kudos to Leviathan for putting in the fight, and a great play by C9 to take that win. All right, and now we're going to wrap up before we do our sign-outs with a brand new feature. This is something that we've had in the works for a little while. Some of you guys might know, and a lot of you probably don't, that a gentleman named Proxy PL, he's a writer for Join Dota as well as some other ventures as well, is the lead writer for the show. He writes a lot, helps me write a lot of the content, helps keep us up to date on tournaments and things like that, because honestly, it's a lot to track. We have chatted about it, and we're going to try out a new feature called Proxy's Perspective, and it is going to be roughly 5 to 6 minutes, and he's going to sort of talk about topics that are relevant to the day. He specializes in tournament coverage, so he'll be chatting a little bit about that, as well as some other things. So today's feature for Proxy's Perspective is something that came up on Around the Pit last week, and that was why NA Dota has a reputation as such an unstable region. So without further ado, let's jump over to a new feature. This is a brand new feature for those of you who are listening called Proxy's Perspective. You can find him at ProxyPL over on Twitter.
Hi guys, this is Proxy, and I'm coming to you with a new segment on the show in which we're gonna talk about everything that I find interesting or worth mentioning, worth talking about from the Dota 2 world. We're gonna do tournament previews, tournament reviews, we're gonna talk about teams performing well or maybe underperforming, the same for players, playing well, playing poorly. We're gonna generally discuss topics that I find worth talking about. And today I would like to go deeper into a question that was asked on Around the Pit episode 3, and it was a question asked by Toffee, and he said that he constantly hears that NA Dota is really unstable and that they change rosters all the time, and he didn't really know what that means. So here it is. Firstly, you have to divide NA Dota into 2 tiers. Tier 1 was EG, and probably still is, and they were stable, a top level team, a tier above everybody else. And then the second tier were all other competitive teams in NA, and those couldn't keep a stable roster together whatsoever. Tournament organizers had no idea if teams will exist next month. That's how bad it was. Players were swapping around, changing at weekly basis, teams were completely different or changing names. It was a complete mess. Like Sneaky Nick's Assassin later turned into Fire, later turned into Summoner's Rift. Every single pro player in NA Dota basically was on that roster at some point. Complexity didn't have a stable roster for like 8 months up until TI. North American Rejects, they have been created from players that couldn't find a stable team. EHAC, they couldn't even keep a stable roster together after they qualified for the LAN to attend it. Root, completely unstable roster, basically created in the end for the qualifiers, and that was the case with every single team. And compared to Europe, it doesn't mean that every team in Europe was stable, but it means that there was a couple of teams that were stable, because unstable teams, of course, you can say Tinker, you can say Alliance, you can say Navi, but there were teams like Team Secret, Cloud9, Empire, NIP, London Conspiracy, Vega, old roster of Virtus Pro, which didn't reshuffle at all and then disbanded, and even Asus Polar to some extent, or current roster of Virtus Pro, which had still core 3 players together, and you knew that the team will exist, maybe have 1 or 2 players different, but the team will exist and the main core players will be the same. So that's the difference between the European Dota last season and North American Dota last season. Right now it's a bit different, because the Europe, they had a really bad TI this year. They had Virtus Pro, which finished 6th, and Team Secret, which finished 8th, and that's very poor for Europe actually. So everybody basically disbanded and created new rosters, and we don't know how that's gonna work. And also in NA it's also a bit different. Basically all the teams from the qualifiers disbanded, and then some new players came to the scene, some old players came from kind of retirement or other gigs, and they basically created 4 or 5 teams that look really good and could stay together. So we're gonna have to see how it is this season, but last season it was definitely unstable, and that's basically how I think it was. So if you like it, leave me a comment at ProxyPL on Twitter, and let me know what would you like me to talk about in this segment. Peace!
Alright, and that's the new feature, Proxy's Perspective. Let me know what you think about it. You can tweet at @Toffees_Dota2 or at ProxyPL. We'll be bringing him back on a weekly basis to sort of talk about things going on in the Dota world. That said, that's the show for tonight, boys and girls. Enjoy 6.85. Don't forget the major on the way, and ESL New York shaping up to be one hell of a tournament. Thank you to Razer for sending over the equipment to help make the show. And of course, if you want to support it, you want to keep us going and help fund things like distribution, etc., as well as new graphics, overlays, and all the fun stuff that you can get, that you see here at Coffee with Toffees. You can go to patreon.com/Toffees and choose to support the show. Don't forget, this is your last week to order mugs. After this, the mugs will be discontinued and we'll be moving to hats. So if you want this fine piece of porcelain, now's the time to get your hands on it. My name is Toffees. As always, guys, it's been fun spending the evening with you. I hope you enjoy playing your Dota tonight, and thanks for watching. Toffees out.